Before I became the woman I am now, the one who stands tall with unshakable eyes, I was just Liana Harlow. A quiet shadow in her own family. I'm 28, and for most of my life, I thought invisibility was safety. That if I stayed in the background, kept my head down, and didn't stir the waters, I'd earn peace. Maybe even love. I was wrong. Sometimes, hiding invites the storm. I grew up in a grand but cold estate just outside of Wellingford, a quiet town where ivy climbed every brick wall and secrets bloomed just as fast. My family was the kind that looked perfect from the outside. My father, Charles, was a successful architect known for his stoicism. My mother, Nadine, was a socialite whose identity was stitched from pearls and perception. And then there was my younger sister, Celeste. Celeste wasn't just the favorite, she was the sun. Golden-haired, loud-laughed, the kind of girl people noticed before she even entered a room. While I played quietly with sketchbooks and science kits, Celeste was performing dance solos in the foyer during dinner parties. I didn't resent her, not at first. I just wanted to be seen too. But in our house, visibility was a currency, and Celeste held the bank. Nadine adored her. She'd say things like, "Celeste was born for the stage," or "Isn't she luminous?" She once told a guest at a gala, "Liana's the smart one, of course, but Celeste, she's got magic in her bones." It sounds harmless, doesn't it? Until you hear it every day. Until it becomes the only definition of who you are. I tried. I brought home awards, skipped grades, got into a prestigious university program. But every triumph was met with tepid applause. If Celeste blinked in public, it was fireworks. If I published a research article, it was "How lovely, dear." I internalized it. Adjusted. I wore muted colors. Avoided photos. Smiled small. I became the easy daughter. Quiet. Safe. Background. But then came Adrian. We met at a university conference on sustainable design. He was everything I wasn't used to, gentle but grounded, passionate without being performative. When he looked at me, he really looked. He listened. Not with condescension or politeness, but with hunger, for knowledge, for connection, for me. We dated for 4 years. Our love wasn't explosive, it was steady, like a flame protected from the wind. When he proposed during a rain-soaked hike in the Lake District, I cried. Not because it was unexpected, but because, for the first time, someone chose me without hesitation. The engagement was simple. The ring wasn't massive, but it was perfect. A vintage emerald cut, tucked into a gold band shaped like a vine. Delicate and intentional, like everything Adrian did. And then came the wedding planning. We decided to host the ceremony at a renovated glasshouse estate called Ashmore Grove, just at the edge of the countryside. Surrounded by wild gardens and climbing roses, it was the perfect balance of elegance and earth. I wanted it to feel like a living fairy tale, quiet, enchanting, sacred. Adrian was involved every step of the way. We designed our own invitations, chose soft piano instrumentals instead of a DJ, and handpicked local flowers for the arch. But for me, nothing mattered more than the dress. I had dreamed of it since I was 12, a gown that looked like moonlight, soft and regal. I spent months visiting ateliers, flipping through swatches, and finally found the one, a hand-sewn A-line silhouette with French lace, pearl-threaded sleeves, and a whisper of silver embroidered along the bodice like falling stars. It cost more than I'd ever spent on anything, but it felt like a piece of my soul. And for once, I didn't second-guess myself. When I showed it to Adrian, his smile melted every insecurity I'd ever carried. "If this is what you want," he said, gently brushing a lock of hair behind my ear, "then it's already perfect." Celeste, of course, had other thoughts. She arrived the week before the wedding, sweeping into my apartment with 2 oversized suitcases and a dramatic sigh. "The bridesmaid's dress is fine," she said, "but don't you think white's a bit predictable for you?" I blinked. "It's a wedding." She laughed like I'd told a joke. "Sure, but you're not exactly theatrical. I mean, You don't want to disappear next to your own venue, right? I didn't answer. I was used to her jabs. It was like getting pricked by roses, expected and still painful. Nadine wasn't much better. When she saw the final dress during the last fitting, she hummed in a strange tone. "It's ambitious," she said, sipping champagne. "But maybe it'll work if the lighting is kind." Adrian's family was the opposite. His mother, Eloise, had a warmth that surprised me every time. She had a quiet strength, always noticed when I was overwhelmed, and often took my hand without saying a word. During the rehearsal dinner, she leaned in and whispered, "Don't let anyone dull you down. You were born to glow." I didn't cry then. But I wanted to. Still, the pressure kept mounting. Celeste began subtly inserting herself everywhere, offering to fix the floral arrangements, changing her hairstyle last minute, demanding to be seated closer to the center during the reception. She rolled her eyes during our ceremony planning and scoffed at our playlist. "She's just nervous," Nadine said. "Let her be involved." But involved wasn't what Celeste wanted. She didn't want to help me shine, she wanted to dim me. And Nadine? She let it happen. Still, I focused on Adrian. On us. On the future we were building. I told myself that, on the wedding day, none of it would matter. That I'd put on my dream dress, walk through the blooming archway beneath 1,000 tiny lights, and leave all of their noise behind me. But I was wrong. Because some people don't just want to be seen. They need to be the only light in the room. And when they can't be, they'd rather burn it all down. The morning of the wedding arrived like a whisper, mist curling through the treetops above Ashmore Grove, dew clinging to the petals in the garden where I would soon say I do. The venue staff moved like dancers, preparing everything with delicate precision. It was serene, sacred, almost surreal. My bridal suite was tucked away behind the west greenhouse, a softly lit, vintage-style room with French doors that opened to a secluded patch of lavender. I'd requested it specifically. A quiet space to breathe before stepping into forever. I had barely slept the night before. Excitement, nerves, and the subtle unease of Celeste's looming presence danced in my chest like moths against a window. Still, I woke up ready. I was going to marry Adrian, and nothing could take that from me. I arrived at the suite with a gentle smile on my lips and a coffee in hand, expecting calm. Instead, I found absence. The dress. My dress. It was gone from the padded hanger where I had left it the night before. Confused, I stepped forward. Then I saw it, folded over the velvet chaise in the corner like discarded fabric. No, not folded. Crushed. I rushed toward it, heart already pounding. The skirt had been ripped clean across the front seam, silk torn jagged like paper. The pearl-threaded sleeves were unraveling, as if someone had pulled at them with force. The embroidered silver stars I had cherished for months were fraying, dangling threads like snapped dreams. My breath caught. The room spun. For a moment, I couldn't even make a sound. My mind couldn't catch up to what my eyes were screaming. Then I heard it, soft laughter just outside the door. Celeste. I moved like my legs weren't my own and yanked open the door. There she was, standing in the hallway, phone in hand, scrolling through something. She looked up, calm as ever. "What did you do?" I asked, my voice shaking so violently I barely recognized it. Her expression didn't flicker. "Excuse me? My dress. You destroyed it. Why?" She blinked, then tilted her head, her voice syrupy. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe it snagged on something?" I was trembling now, not from fear, but fury. "Celeste, this was my wedding dress. You knew how much it meant to me. You." She cut me off with a shrug. "I just think it's funny how dramatic you're being over a pile of fabric." Before I could reply, she gave me a smug smile. "Besides, if it really meant that much, maybe you should have picked a dress that suited you." I stood frozen, watching her saunter off down the hallway like nothing had happened. A staff member walked by, slowed, then approached me with a concerned expression. I don't know how this happened, I said quietly. "It was fine last night." The woman hesitated, then said carefully, "Your sister, asked us to give her a few minutes in the suite this morning. She said she had a surprise for you. We thought." I nodded numbly. I didn't need more proof. The evidence wasn't just the torn silk. It was in every look, every comment Celeste had made leading up to this. She hadn't just been jealous, she had been planning this. But as I stood there, shattered, another figure appeared in the doorway. Eloise. Adrian's mother moved with quiet urgency, eyes immediately taking in the chaos, my crumpled form, the ruined dress, the staff member's horrified face. Her expression didn't show shock. It showed something colder, confirmation. "I had a feeling," she said gently, stepping fully into the room. "That's why I brought something." She pulled a long garment bag from behind her, carefully unzipped it, and revealed a gown unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was old, clearly vintage, but stunning. Made from shimmering moon silk, with hand-beaded crystal accents across the bodice and a flowing train that whispered across the floor like smoke. There were delicate lace cuffs on the sleeves and tiny opals sewn into the neckline like stars. "This," she said quietly, "was the gown I wore at my wedding. It's been preserved for decades. I never thought I'd offer it to anyone, until I met you." My eyes widened. "Eloise, I can't, this is. It's worth more than I ever told anyone," she said. "When it was first made, it cost over £400,000. But it's not about the price. It's about who it's meant for." I felt tears sting the corners of my eyes, not from sadness, but from something I hadn't felt in a long time, being seen. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "Say yes," she said simply. "And show them, show everyone, that nothing they do can dim your light." I nodded, breath catching. "Let's do it." It took just under an hour for the stylist to adjust the gown. It fit as if it had been tailored for me all along. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't just see a bride, I saw a woman standing in her power. As I stepped outside into the garden, the music began to play, soft, reverent, like the hum of a cathedral. Guests stood, heads turning. I heard the gasps, the murmurs. But I didn't shrink. I let them look. At the end of the aisle stood Adrian, tears in his eyes, his expression full of wonder. But just before I reached him, I passed the front row. And there she was. Celeste. Her mouth parted, her eyes wide. She looked like someone had knocked the wind out of her. Beside her sat Nadine, lips pressed thin, hands gripping her clutch until her knuckles went white. They had expected to break me. Instead, they watched me rise. I reached the altar and took Adrian's hands. "You look like a goddess," he whispered. "I feel like one," I replied. We exchanged vows beneath the blooming archway, our words carried by wind and grace. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, our kiss wasn't just a seal of love, it was a declaration that no amount of bitterness could bury joy. As we turned to face our guests and walked back down the aisle, petals danced in the air like blessings. I didn't look back. Because the girl I used to be, the one who stayed quiet, who played small, wasn't walking with me anymore. Ashmore Grove transformed as day shifted into evening. Strings of lights glowed above the reception tables like captured stardust, and laughter bubbled like champagne among the guests. Every table shimmered with soft florals, delicate glassware, and flickering votives. And at the center of it all, Adrian and I. My gown, Eloise's heirloom, flowed around me like moonlight. I moved with reverence, every step a celebration, every glance toward Adrian a reminder of what we'd built. Guests offered compliments like gifts, genuine, warm, unfiltered. And though the memory of my ruined gown still stung, I felt empowered, whole. But not everyone shared that joy. From across the courtyard, I could feel Celeste watching. Her arms were crossed tightly, jaw clenched, resentment practically radiating off her. She hadn't spoken a word to me since the ceremony. Nadine sat beside her, face unreadable, yet her eyes never strayed far from me either. I avoided them. I thought, Let them stew in their bitterness. I wasn't here to prove anything to them anymore. But people like Celeste don't fade into the background. Not when someone else is finally in the spotlight they believe belongs to them. It happened just after the group photos. Adrian had just gone to grab us drinks, and I was chatting with a cousin of his near the central garden path. I was mid-laugh when I heard sharp footsteps storming toward me. "Who do you think you are?" The question pierced the air. I turned. Celeste. Her voice was loud enough that nearby conversations stopped. Some guests looked up from their plates. Others turned, eyebrows raised. "I beg your pardon?" I said, careful to keep my tone even. She pointed at my gown, then my veil, then my tiara, Vivian's, which Eloise had lovingly placed atop my head just before I walked down the aisle. "All this," she sneered. "This performance. That gown. The jewelry. You're parading around like royalty, but you're just a second-rate daughter playing dress-up." Whispers began. I didn't move. "Celeste, please stop." "Why should I?" she snapped, stepping closer. "You've always been the boring one. The extra. You don't get to upstage me. Not today. Not ever." My heart raced, but I stood my ground. "You already destroyed one dress today," I said quietly. "Why are you still trying to ruin what's left?" Her face contorted with rage. "Oh, that rag? I did you a favor," she spat. "It was pathetic. Just like you." Then, in a blur, she reached out, grabbed the hem of my gown, and yanked. Hard. A collective gasp rippled across the garden. The sound of tearing silk echoed like thunder. Celeste had ripped the bottom half of the gown clean along its side seam. Pearls and crystal beading scattered like broken glass. The train, once trailing behind me like poetry, now sagged in tatters. I froze, stunned. For a breathless moment, I couldn't speak. Around me, guests stared, mouths open. A few stood. Adrian, from across the reception tent, dropped his glass and ran. "What is wrong with you?" I finally said, voice trembling, not with fear, but fury. "This is a $400,000 gown. Vivian trusted me with it. And you've destroyed it. Again." Before Celeste could reply, another voice cut through the air. "How dare you speak to your sister like that?" Marched through the crowd, heels clicking like a metronome of judgment, came Nadine. She didn't look shocked. She didn't look ashamed. She looked enraged. Not at Celeste. At me. "She just attacked me in front of everyone," I said, backing away. "She tore my dress." Again. Nadine didn't hesitate. "You think you're some kind of princess now?" she hissed, her face inches from mine. "Wearing another woman's dress. Talking down to your sister. Embarrassing your family like this?" Before I could speak, before I could even flinch, her fist came down like a hammer. A blinding, burning pain exploded across my nose as her knuckles connected. I stumbled backward, crashing into a nearby chair, grabbing the edge to keep myself from falling. Blood rushed down my face, warm and terrifying. Silence. Deafening. I blinked. I couldn't believe what had just happened. My own mother, on my wedding day, had punched me. Screams broke out. Adrian was by my side in seconds. "Liana, oh my God, you're bleeding. Stay with me." Behind him, guests were shouting. A woman screamed for help. Someone was already on the phone. Then came the deep voice of Jordan, the venue manager. "This is over. I'm calling the police." The words cut through the noise. Minutes passed in a blur. Red and blue lights cast pulsing shadows on the garden path. 2 police officers moved with purpose. A paramedic knelt beside me, dabbing at my bloodied face with practiced care. "You're going to be okay," he said. "Your nose doesn't appear broken, but there's bruising and a laceration. We'll clean it up." Adrian hovered protectively, his arm around me like a shield. I could see the fury in his jaw, the way his hands trembled from holding back. The officers separated Nadine and Celeste from the crowd. "I didn't do anything wrong," Nadine barked. "She provoked me." Jordan stepped in. "She punched the bride. Her daughter. And the sister ripped her dress. We have surveillance. Ask anyone. An officer approached me with a clipboard. Ma'am, he said gently, do you want to press charges? Adrian squeezed my hand. My mouth felt dry. My body ached. My gown was ruined. My face stung. And the guests, those witnesses, looked at me like I had just stepped out of someone else's story. But this was mine. Yes, I said clearly. Assault and property destruction. I want a formal complaint on record. The officers didn't flinch. They moved efficiently. Celeste screamed as they cuffed her. It's just a stupid dress. Adrian cut in. It's not just a dress. It was worth more than your dignity, both times. Nadine was next. As the handcuffs clicked into place, she glared at me one final time. I'm your mother. She shrieked. I met her eyes, calm and unwavering. And now the world knows what that really means. They were led away under flashing lights, faces twisted with outrage, their masks finally cracked beyond repair. I sat still, blood wiped clean, pain pulsing under my skin, but inside, something else stirred. It wasn't brokenness. It was clarity. I had been struck. But I had not fallen. And I wasn't done rising yet. 6 weeks passed. 6 weeks of police statements, legal appointments, insurance evaluations, and deep breath conversations. 6 weeks of silence from my family, no apologies, no explanations, not even a denial. Just a vacuum. A hole where love should have been. But something else filled that silence, clarity. I didn't return to the Harlow estate. I didn't answer my mother's lawyer's initial calls or respond to Celeste's social media tantrums once the news reached local headlines. My wedding, the one they tried to destroy, had gone viral. Not for its beauty, but for its brutality. The headline read: Bride assaulted by mother and sister over gown on wedding day. The footage was blurry but unmistakable, Celeste tearing the dress, Nadine striking me. Guests testifying. Blood on my veil. Some reporters waited outside the courthouse during pre-trial hearings, asking for a quote. I gave them the same one every time. They tried to rip my joy apart, but all they did was prove I never needed their approval. Adrian stood by me through it all. He came to every meeting, every hearing, every late-night spiral when I'd wake up from dreams where Celeste's fingers were still yanking at the silk, or my mother's voice was still telling me I was nothing. Vivian, Eloise, was my lighthouse. She sat behind me in the courtroom, spine straight, hands folded. She'd quietly bring tea to our home, send me snippets of bridal magazine articles, and remind me, grace is not weakness. Sometimes it's defiance in disguise. And when it came time to testify, I walked into that courtroom not as the forgotten daughter, but as the woman who refused to be silent anymore. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman with silver hair and no tolerance for theatrics, read the charges aloud. Celeste Harlow, willful destruction of private property, disorderly conduct, public disturbance. Nadine Harlow, aggravated assault, intent to harm, domestic battery in a public setting. The evidence was damning. The video showed Celeste sneaking into my dressing suite early that morning. Showed her smirking. It showed her tearing the dress in front of 100 guests. It showed Nadine, full of rage, raising her hand and striking me. Celeste's defense tried to spin it. Emotional overwhelm, they called it. She felt unseen, unloved, overshadowed by her older sister. I sat, composed, and whispered to Adrian, "Isn't that ironic?" Nadine's lawyer didn't fare any better. He tried to reduce her act to a heated familial moment. But Nadine ruined their case herself. When asked if she regretted punching me, she raised her chin and said to the judge, "Liana disrespected our family. She humiliated us by dressing like a queen and treating her sister like a stranger." The room froze. Her voice, once worshipped in social circles, now rang like a gavel of her own guilt. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Harlow, this court is not here to evaluate your idea of family tradition. What you did was assault. And you've shown no remorse for it." When the verdict came, I didn't exhale until I heard every word. Celeste, sentenced to 3 months in county jail with mandated community service. Fined and ordered to pay full restitution, $400,000, for the destroyed couture gown, through structured garnishments to her income. Nadine, sentenced to 1 full year in state prison. Required to complete anger management therapy. A legal restraining order barred her from contacting me in any way, permanently, unless approved by a court. When the gavel dropped, I didn't feel victorious. I felt weightless. It wasn't about revenge. It never was. It was about showing the world, and more importantly, myself, that I would not be broken by blood ties that brought only pain. Outside the courthouse, a reporter tried to ask if I felt sorry for them. I smiled politely and said, they made their choices. And I made mine. Weeks later, I visited Eloise's private storage unit. She had kept not just her gown, but sketches, samples, even handwritten journals from when she had once dreamed of opening a bridal design studio before she gave up that path to raise her family. We stood in that quiet space together, fingers brushing over bolts of lace and silk, both of us seeing something more than fabric. We could bring it to life, I said. Not just for you, but for me. For every woman who's ever been told she's not enough. Eloise smiled. Then let's begin. 2 months later, in a sun-drenched corner of Brookhaven's historic district, a new sign went up. Second Bloom Bridal. The name wasn't just poetic, it was my truth. I wasn't blooming for the first time. I was blooming again, after they tried to bury me. The studio was small, with pearl white walls, hand-carved mannequins, floor-to-ceiling mirrors, and a scent of fresh gardenia and courage. We displayed fabrics like art. Every fitting room had affirmations embroidered into the curtains. And at the front of the studio, behind a glass display, stood Eloise's legendary gown, now restored, cleaned, and shimmering under soft lights. It wasn't for sale. But beneath it sat a plaque that read, "This gown belonged to a bride who stood tall when others tried to tear her down." Her story reminds us, dignity cannot be unraveled. I met brides from all walks of life. One woman, tearful and unsure of her worth, whispered, "I don't feel beautiful enough to wear white." I held her hand, adjusted the veil, and said, "You already are." Every dress I designed wasn't just fabric and fantasy, it was a declaration. And every woman I dressed carried a thread of my story in hers. Adrian came by the shop every afternoon with coffee and a kiss. He never let the spark fade. Some evenings, we'd walk home under the street lamps, our hands linked, hearts still healing but held close. I often told him, "It still doesn't feel real." He'd squeeze my hand and say, "It's because you made your own fairy tale. And this time, no one's rewriting it but you." We moved into a small cottage outside town, ivy on the walls, laughter in the kitchen, and no more ghosts in the closet. Celeste moved out of state after her sentence. Word was, she struggled to keep a job with her record. I never heard from her again. As for Nadine, she's still serving her time. And she'll have plenty of it to reflect. But I'm not looking back. Not anymore. There's a moment, every evening, when the last light of day filters through the high windows of my studio, landing on the gown in the display case. It casts a golden halo across the fabric, like it's glowing from within. That's when I stop, breathe, and remember everything. I remember who I used to be. The girl who tried to stay small, to not upset the balance. The girl who thought love was something to earn by being agreeable. The one who smiled through insults, who said it's okay when it wasn't. I don't recognize her anymore. But I still honor her. Because without her, I wouldn't be here. Business at Second Bloom Bridal had grown faster than I expected. Word traveled. Brides came from across counties not just for the gowns, but for the experience. Some came unsure, awkward, shyly clutching photos torn from old magazines. Others came confident, but burdened with unspoken insecurities. I met them all with the same truth. You are not here to impress anyone. You're here to celebrate who you already are. Sometimes they cried. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they asked about the dress in the glass case, the one no price tag could touch. I always told them the same thing. That dress belonged to someone who stood her ground. Someone who refused to be erased. She chose herself. They never asked more after that. They didn't need to. One spring afternoon, I was finishing up a consultation with a quiet bride named Camilla when she stopped, eyes locked on the gown. "It's strange," she said softly, "but I don't think I came here for a dress. I think I came here to find myself again." I smiled. "Then you're exactly where you need to be." That night, as I walked home with Adrian, fingers interlaced, I felt it again, the quiet strength that had taken root in me since that day at Ashmore Grove. Not a loud, defiant rage. But a solid, steady knowing. I had survived my mother's cruelty. My sister's sabotage. The shame. The public spectacle. The broken dreams. The blood on my wedding veil. And in the ruins, I built something better. Not a revenge fantasy. A legacy. Adrian still looked at me like I was his miracle. But now, I looked in the mirror and saw my own. We talked about the future sometimes. About starting a family. About what we'd teach our children. I knew what I'd tell them. That sometimes, the people meant to protect you are the ones who hurt you most. But pain doesn't get to write your whole story. You do. And if anyone ever tries to tear you down, you stand taller. If they rip your dress, wear your scars like silk. If they strike you, don't strike back. Rise. You don't have to be perfect to deserve peace. You don't need anyone's permission to bloom. A few months later, I received a letter. Handwritten. The penmanship was shaky, unfamiliar. It was from Nadine. No return address. Just a folded note inside. "I watched your boutiques opening on the news. They said your gowns were powerful, that you helped women see themselves differently. I never did that for you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say. You became someone remarkable. I couldn't see it then. I see it now." I stared at the words for a long time. Then I folded the letter, slid it into the back of my journal, and closed the cover. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumph. Just peace. On the 1-year anniversary of our wedding, Adrian and I returned to Ashmore Grove. The venue manager, Jordan, greeted us with open arms and a bottle of champagne he'd kept tucked away. We stood in the garden under the archway, now blooming with late summer roses, and took each other's hands again. "I never imagined," I said, "that this place would hold so much pain. And still feel like home." Adrian pulled me close. "It's because of what we made here, Liana. Not what they tried to destroy." We danced, barefoot, on the grass under fading light. No guests. No drama. No cameras. Just music, and laughter, and the sound of two people who had rewritten their vows 100 times since, with every moment of grace, forgiveness, and resilience. As the sun dipped low, I looked up at the sky, painted in lavender and gold. And I whispered to the girl I used to be. "You made it." I am Liana Harlow. I am 28 years old. I am a survivor, a creator, and a woman who will never again apologize for taking up space. They tried to ruin my wedding. They tried to silence my voice. But I spoke. I rose. And now, every stitch I sew into lace, every bride I guide toward her reflection, is a prayer stitched from fire. This isn't just a story of pain. It's a story of power. Mine. And maybe now, it's yours too.